Now, the other question I had, and I found an answer, I think, Philip Green, who is, Philip Green is a professor of government emeritus at Smith College. And he was on the editorial board of The Nation for many years, author of several books. He has a blog at takingsides.medium.com. takingsides.medium.com. You might want to check it out. Anyway, he's going to get kind of scholarly on us here. Listen up. He writes, he's trying to answer the question, 74 million. Why? Why? Question I've raised many times. All those people who voted for more of Trump's poison. So Philip writes, I was going to write about democracy from the commonplace standpoint that the United States isn't really much of one, and then segue to some comments about what can be done, failing constitutional amendments, to make it more so. But on reflection, I think that much consideration of that subject would have been putting the cart before the horse. Our problem is deeper than the Electoral College and gerrymandering and the filibuster, and its name is not Donald Trump, or at least it's not only Donald Trump. It's also we, the people, who did not form a more perfect union in 1787, and as we have been learning to our dismay, may not have done so yet. The classic discussion of types of government is that of Aristotle. And his most resonant conclusion is that which he called polity. It was the most practical form of government. And one of his varying definitions of it is that it's a combination of two of the three non-virtuous forms of government, democracy and oligarchy, each checking the other. The virtuous forms of aristocracy, which is the rule of the wise, and monarchy, which is ruled by the good, being more or less unattainable. The result, which Philip prefers to call representative oligarchy, is what we have today and have always had. The two tendencies always in conflict, but never one totally displacing the other. So, and then Philip goes on. He says, being a self-styled democratic theorist, of course, I tend to view democracy, which is ruled by the people, as the good half of that tandem, and oligarchy, rule of the rich, as the bad. But suppose we stop thinking in those moralizing terms, usually defined tendentiously for the sake of an argument, and look at them in practice. That is, look at how people, that would be us, the demos, are responding to whatever is the ongoing balance. And then what do we see? Well, for the past several months, we've seen the people, 74 million of them, in action. And what do we find? The people, so-called, or at least the quite dangerous segment of them who've come to the fore in this period, hate democracy. The Proud Boys, the 3%ers, the Oath Keepers, the Confederate flag wavers, the women who swear by QAnon, and everyone who followed them into the breach. I'm not making this up or cleverly deducing it from their behavior. Their hatred of democracy is right out in the open in every firsthand account of the insurrection, in what was overheard, and in quotes given unabashedly to interviewers. And above all, in the down-to-earth political behavior that has supported so-called red state efforts to roll back universal suffrage full throttle. Or, to look at it from the other side of the Aristotelian coin, what do the 74 million think about oligarchy? Answer, it's fine with them. Doesn't bother them at all. Don't drain the swamp, fill it up. Drown the whole polity in corruption. Makes no difference. They've been governed for 4 years by the most oligarchical, kleptocratic, plutocrat regime in American history, and they're begging for more of it. No holds barred. And by the way, down with democracy. So to return to my question and Mike Malloy's, why? Why? And here I'm going to depart for a moment from all the socio-psychoanalyses of the authoritarian personality, the radical right, the paranoid style in American politics, yada, 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 not to mention all indictments of the psychopathic president, including my own indictments. Not because these analyses tell us nothing at all, as they indeed sometimes tell us a lot about some groups of persons, but first, because we're in danger of adopting a position in which we look down on those somehow lesser who lack our own privileged standpoint of pure rationality, and second, and more crucially, because they have nothing specific to offer about the actual topic of discussion, which is democracy. Is there something about democracy itself? And if so, what is it? That might lead masses of people to hate it? What makes it so susceptible to anti-democratic demagoguery as to have verged on collapse on January 6th without any apparent concern on the part of the legitimate authorities? I think, Philip writes, the answer is obvious. Among all the forms of government, Plato's or Aristotle's or Rousseau's or anyone else's, democracy is unique in the requirement that the losers of a vote have to be prepared to lose, have to think losing is okay, have to engage in, quote, the peaceful transition of power, end quote, to have to say, if only in fake good cheer, well, wait till next year. And that is the great, to many even, maybe to 74 million, the unforgivable weakness, the original sin of democracy. And at the end, the great demagogue, who Malloy calls the orange bastard, didn't offer them the betterment of daily life, didn't offer them more equality, didn't tell his cohort that stopping immigration had increased their standard of living. Of course, it hadn't. From well before November 3rd, right up to and through January 6th, the great demagogue offered not losing. Because losing sucks. Losing is for losers. Losing is weakness. And you're either weak or you're strong. You can't be both. And which would you rather be? As George Steinbrenner so helpfully put it, the second place finisher is the first loser. This consideration of winning and losing also perhaps helps to explain something else about the 74 million. Donald Trump's seemingly inexplicable appeal to rabidly right-wing women. Women, at least contemporary women, want to be strong rather than weak just as much as men do, though in some cases the context might be different. It was a woman, after all, who first broke or tried to break the taboo on bringing guns onto the House floor. As Hobbes suggested, give a woman a gun and she's as dangerous as a man. Hobbes' understanding of that turned what should have been Trump's great weakness into another source of his continuing strength. In sum, for men and women who followed Trump, at some point, political conflict stopped being a game with rules and became a war with guns. No accident, then, that taking away our guns is the deepest source of right-wing hatred for liberals, along with abortion, in both cases for women as well as men. And here then we can return to the orthodoxies of political science, which suggest that along with the family, the most important source of political socialization is the sitting president, whoever that might be. What he has preached is what has been heard by the millions over and over. This is the culture war, the source of his fiercest and most constant complaint. But we have to understand it as a social reality, a material phenomenon. And in so treating it, I will also return willy-nilly to a more psychoanalytic analysis of such phenomena, but only in the recognition that I myself am and always have been a privileged white male who has benefited and still benefits from being in the position I now criticize and analyze. To put it simply, after 8 years of Clinton and again of Obama, and now more to come, what does the right have? As Joy Reid at MSNBC put it on Inauguration Eve, the right has clearly lost the culture war. Multidiversity is the name of the Democratic game throughout the mass media. The right's foothold is reduced to Fox and Friends, going to rallies where songs by celebrities who actually oppose Trump are played without their permission, and relying on internet propaganda and talk radio harangues that consist of unmistakably fantastical and imaginary conspiracies that have no existence at all outside the closed-in world of the deranged, and are well beneath the moral level of hardcore pornography. What has been lost, what is felt to have been lost more than anything else in the so-called culture wars, is the privileged status of being white. The evidence of this mindset has been visible for more than 4 decades. In public opinion survey after survey, white Americans in large majorities have agreed with the statement that black people have been the beneficiaries of too much favorable treatment, too soon and too fast. Beneath all the rhetoric about political correctness and being looked down on by coastal elites, racism is what rings the bell. Racism, and concomitantly fear. The fear instilled by a classic insistence of projection in which one's own passion to destroy the other becomes the threat of the other to destroy oneself, and in which the self is taken over by the paranoid style of cognition, wherein the very lack of evidence for the steal and the conspiracy becomes the most frightening sign of the reality. The gun must be picked up and carried openly into the very heart of the treacherous democracy. The insurrection was, among other things, a revelation of all the myriad ways, direct or symbolic, which the underside of America can access to insult, revile, and ultimately be terrified by its opponents, whom it has turned into invented enemies. Well, there you go, Philip Green. I hope that has been as entertaining to you as it was to me. A couple of very well-positioned writers with whom I share an awful lot of philosophy about what is happening, or not philosophy, reality about what is happening, and opinions about why and how it has happened. And as they both pointed out, Trump, as I pointed out too, Trump is nothing but the pimple that exploded from beneath the surface of the skin of the body politic and erupted and spewed this Nazi Christian fascist pus all over everything. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.